I'm Oksana Kichigina, and welcome to Various Sides of Life. We are going to cover social, national, and international problems that occur in our world. And our topic for today is school bullying in the United States. Now I would like to take a moment and watch a short video by ABC News. While watching this video, what did you feel? Fear, empathy, sadness, or maybe anger? So do you consider it bullying? Now let's imagine this situation. A student is walking past you in the hallway and calls you a nasty name, just once. Between these two situations, what did you all consider bullying? Therefore, to be clear, bullying is a physical or verbal mistreatment that is an ongoing and persistent, intentional, and has an imbalance of power. Bullying has become a common issue in our society that occurs almost everywhere, whether it happens at home, workplace, school bus, or neighborhood. However, school bullying in particular in the United States happens more often and has a huge impact on children. According to bullyingstatistics.org, in 2016, 1 in 4 kids in the U.S. was bullied on a regular basis. U.S. Department of Justice states that approximately 160,000 kids per day do not attend school for fear of being bullied. According to Wallet Hub, the state of Kansas ranks 29th with the biggest bullying problem. Finally, based on my personal experience, when I was in middle school, I was exposed to bullying that lasted 5 years. In order to learn more about bullying issue, the cause and effect of it, and how can we stop this issue, I have two guests today, Associate Professor of Social Welfare School Dr. Williford, and student Christine Waisner, who is also president of the Active Mind Clubs. Please keep watching us, and we will be back with our first guest. Welcome back to Various Sides of Life. My first guest is Kristen, who's the president of Active Minds Club. Hi, Kristen. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, since you know that our topic for today is bullying, school bullying in the United States, could you share me your story, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my story started when I moved to Kansas. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and I went to an all-girls school there, very small, 13 girls in my class.
Wow.
Then I moved to Kansas, and I went to another small school, but it was co-ed, and so that was the first time I had been to a school with boys in it. And immediately my experience was very different. It was clear I was very different to my classmates. I didn't know how to act around boys. I didn't know how to make friends in that situation. And so pretty much right off the bat, my class of about 65 students kind of singled me out as like different, and I was targeted specifically for my size. So I'm a little bit of a bigger person, and I always have been. I was 5'8" in first grade, so I was a big kid, and people really, that was something that was easy for them to make fun of. And so they would pick fun at me for the fact that I had to wear undergarments that the other girls didn't have to wear. They would, in gym class, we would all have to like change together and shower, and they would kind of make comments about how I had like body fat that none of the other girls had, and that my pants were a much larger size than the other girls, and that really affected me. That started kind of a lifelong journey with problems with the way that I look in my body. I feel very uncomfortable in my skin sometimes, and I always have from that. And that bullying kind of spanned throughout lower school, middle school, and high school. It changed in the way that it presented itself, however. It became less about direct taunts and more about I wasn't invited to parties, or I wasn't asked to, when the whole grade was invited to a swim party, I would be the only person not invited.
And how long ago was it that like this happened?
So I'm a senior now, so that was 5 years ago because I've been in school for 5 years. So that was when I was last in high school and the last time I experienced bullying. But the worst of it was probably about 8 or 9 years ago when I was a freshman in high school, 8th grade, kind of the 14-year-old age range. That was the worst of it.
So how did you feel personally? What did you do to overcome that feeling being, unrecognized in your class?
Yeah, so something I did was I tried to float from friend group to friend group. I really tried to find my place with like a peer group that could kind of surround me and support me. I was very good at making very short friendships that helped me feel good in that instance, but always the mean girls would eventually kind of infiltrate that group and make it clear that I was not someone to interact with. And so one of the ways that I coped was very unhealthy. I started not eating and like trying to make my body change because I couldn't understand why they hated me so much, and so I needed something to blame. And so I blamed my size because that was the easiest out for me. And so I started doing all sorts of crazy diets and things like that, all the way from, I started doing that in about 4th grade, and I only stopped 3 years ago. So it took a long time.
Do you wish, today nowadays a lot of women, celebrities and activists who propose women size plus, we have to embrace our body, we should not be ashamed of it, people should love us as well, like skinny girls, right? So do you believe if there were people like that back in those days when it happened to you, do you think it would be a better situation to you and to other people?
See, that's a funny question because it was actually one of those people who taught me my worst behaviors. So I had a body positive teacher come to our school in the 4th grade to teach us how to love ourselves and what that meant. The downside to that conversation, however, was she mentioned she had an eating disorder in her childhood, and what that was. I'd never heard that word before. And she kind of explained that that meant she didn't eat and she lost a lot of weight. And so instead of hearing the body positive message, I instead heard, oh wow, here's this fun new way to just lose weight. And so I think if I had had a body positive role model, that might have helped more, because my mother was also like larger. She'd been a model her whole life and then had 3 kids, and stuff happens to your body, and she really struggled with that. And so I, instead of a positive role model, I had her constantly having new diets, constantly talking about how she felt uncomfortable in her skin. So I do think that if I'd had someone I'd known personally, not a speaker necessarily, but someone I had known or could talk to, I think that definitely would have helped me understand that it's not my size. It was just that I didn't like the same things that the kids in my class did. I would rather watch medical dramas or like surgeries on YouTube than go out to a skate park or do anything. And so
it's also kind of like a lack of diversity, because diversity is not only about race, religion, right? Diversity is what you like to do, what is different from others, right?
Absolutely.
But were you able to tell your parents or your mom like that happened to you, that bullying happened to you?
Yeah, my mom was really supportive, and she tried so many different things to make it better for me. We considered sending me to school in Mexico at one point. She'd read a book that a girl did that and loved it. I attended like other schools for a day to see if I would like them, and my mom was really supportive because I would come home and I would just be exhausted. I would sleep for like 5 hours just because it was so emotionally taxing. And she was always there for me and always so supportive, and kind of just kept feeding me that self-confidence. Like it's not like you, it's just the environment you're in. It's a small school with very narrow-minded people that you don't belong in right now. And she helped a lot. She really did. But
well, that's good. I'm very happy that your parents were supportive and that you always also was open to your parents, because not a lot of children can share things like that to their parents, right? Because they might find that, oh, if I share it to my parents, like my peers gonna find it shameless, right? Like shameful. But when you became a president of Active Mind Clubs, do you have like specific things that you share with members of the club, like how we should fight this problem, social problem, or any programs that you know that you would like to probably be connected and share with others, like how we should prevent the bullying problem?
Bullying? Well, it's a little bit different in college than, like, because we are a college group, and so we focus more on just including everyone and like not judging people for what they do. So we have people who are on all spectrums, and they, you know, we have sorority people, we have sports people, we have people who are in journalism, we have engineers. Like, we have lots of different types of people in our group, and I think that alone is kind of a positive message, because we're all together talking about one common thing. We just try to encourage each other, and I know that if there are any instances when someone feels down or like they're being targeted, I personally try and talk to them and I try to make it very clear that anyone in the group at any time of the day could contact me, and I will be there and I will answer and I will try to help as best I can. I'm not an expert, so I don't know everything, but I can be someone you can talk to for sure. And I think that alone can just be really impactful, just to know that there is someone who you could call, like, and they're gonna be there 100%. And that's kind of our message, is we just want to be inclusive and help people in any way that they need help, whether that's with bullying or like mental illness or just in school or really any journey that they're on. We want to help them.
So do you believe in the future the bullying problem will decrease or increase? Your personal feeling?
I don't see it decreasing if things continue the way they are. I think it will take a lot of significant interventions in the way schools are designed, as well as the training that teachers receive. Most teachers do not really understand how to deal with bullying, nor why bullying occurs. And generally, there's a lot of different things that are going on that are not seen, and unless the system is changed and there are better policies and better training, I don't see it going away, because the children who are suffering are suffering so much, and you can't expect them to be the change in the system. That should be the adults and the people watching it happen and just doing nothing. Like, that's where the change needs to happen. So hopefully it will. Hopefully, absolutely.
But, Kristen, thank you so much for joining me today and talking to me more about bullying and sharing your story. Please keep watching us, and we will be back.
Where you go to college makes a statement about you. This place will become a part of you, your identity for life. The University of Kansas, a great place to be you.
Welcome back, and our topic for today is bullying. My next guest is Dr. Williford. Thank you, Dr. Williford, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And, before we start talking about bullying problem, it's very sad and major problem in our society, not only in the United States, but the world itself. I noticed that your research interests include understanding characteristics associated with bullying and peer victimization among children. Why you decided to focus on this?
Before I became a faculty member at the University of Kansas, I spent about 5 years working in the field as a social worker. And I worked in a number of different public school settings where I actually saw kids engaging in bullying on a fairly regular basis. And particularly concerning were the kids who were being targeted. I saw them oftentimes withdraw and feel excluded from their peer group. And it really made me very interested in coming up with solutions for this particular problem after the effects I saw that it had on the kids involved.
Wow, that's very interesting. Not a lot of people I've met who actually concerned about bullying problem and what happens to children. So I think it's very interesting, and you have a lot of empathy. So my first question will be, what are the main factors that contribute to a child being a bully?
Well, bullying is I think it's important to state right away that it's a sub-form of aggressive behavior. We think that it has particular characteristics that make it distinct. So one of the things that we have identified that's important in understanding the problem of bullying is that it's a behavior that is intended to hurt or harm someone else and is something that takes place within a power differential. So the child who is perpetrating the bullying has some type of either real or perceived power over the child that they're targeting. And that's really important to keep in mind, because oftentimes we think of children who bully as these pathological kids who are up to no good, or they have low self-esteem, which is not always the case actually. Many children who find themselves engaging in bullying are doing so because of their social environment, so that there are peers that may provide the kind of reward that they're seeking. So by targeting somebody who's weaker, they are able to demonstrate their power and dominance over that child, which then gains them favor within their peer group, so that they are gaining either material or social rewards as a result of engaging in these behaviors. So oftentimes what we find is kids who are bullying are kids who may do well in the classroom, they may get along with teachers, they may be popular kids, they may have a lot of social competence. So it's not necessarily that children who bully can be put into one particular box, that there's really a lot of different kinds of kids who may find themselves engaging in these behaviors. What we worry about are kids who begin to display aggressive behavior early in their childhood, and that then escalates into bullying and more severe forms of aggression as they grow older. And those are the kids that we start to worry about, who may become increasingly delinquent as they move into adolescence. They may engage in more significant and severe forms of violence as they get older.
Yeah, I think I will agree with you with what you said about that we cannot put bullies into a particular group, right, into a particular category. And the two categories I know personally, those children who bully somebody, they either had some problems inside of their family, so maybe their parents abused them or did something to them that hurt them personally, and they want to do sort of the same thing to somebody else. Or those students who feel powerful because they have respect from other peers, or their teachers adore them and they like, oh, they're the best, you know, they communicate with them. And actually the reason why I'm saying that, when I was in 7th grade, those people who bullied me, they had really good relationship with teachers. And teachers knew that those people bullied me, but they never said anything to them, like, don't do that, stop, you know, just leave her alone. They laughed sometimes about it. I'm from Russia, and I do not know how here in the United States teachers react to that, but in my school, in my town, since it was a very small town, a couple of teachers did not react to it at all. And yeah, it was very, very sad to me. And at first I thought maybe their parents did something to them, so then they come to school and they do the same thing to me and other students. That was my first version of thinking, but then I found out that they actually feel more powerful and respected by others. That's why they do that.
And it can be, certainly, sometimes we do find that kids are displaying the behaviors that they see modeled in their environment. So if there is that kind of, the drive for power in other relationships in their lives, in their families, or other models that they're seeing that are utilizing these behaviors, that could be one reason that a child would engage in them themselves. But we also do find that these tangible rewards that children receive as a result of engaging in these behaviors, in terms of social status, popularity oftentimes, certainly power and dominance over people, those can be frankly difficult sometimes to disrupt. So as adults, sometimes our ability to stop children from bullying can be limited because it's hard to counteract those rewards that children are receiving as a result of that behavior.
Yes, I agree with you. And my next question will be, what are the factors that put a child at risk of being bullied?
So there are a lot of different ways that we can think about children who might be targeted. One of the things that we've really come to focus a lot on is the influence of the social environment, because again, we do see bullying as a social phenomenon. So if there are certain characteristics that aren't valued, for example, in a particular peer group, that can put a child at risk for being victimized. So really anything that might put that child at odds with what is quote-unquote normal or accepted can put a child at risk. But we do know that there are certain populations of kids who are at a consistently higher rate for being victimized, and those are children who may identify as lesbian, gay, transgendered, bisexual, questioning. So LGBTQ youth, we know, are at a particularly high risk. We also know that sometimes children with disabilities, particularly those when those disabilities are more invisible, children who perhaps may be on the autism spectrum or may have hyperactivity, something that other peers might find quote-unquote irritating, might put children at risk for being victimized. But it can be, frankly, really anything that puts them at odds with what is considered to be the most valued characteristics in a particular social setting. So for example, oftentimes we see that some of the most popular kids here in American high schools are kids who play sports or kids who are in certain groups. When you're not a part of those groups, you might find that you're at risk for being targeted.
Excluded.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, going back to my experience, I try to keep up with my peers, try to follow the fashion trends. I try to behave the same way, even though I was underage and I observed my peers smoking and drinking. I thought maybe if I do that, maybe they stop bullying me, but unfortunately did not. I harmed my health, but at the same time, I did not benefit myself from being stop being bullied, that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I tried to keep up with them, but it did not work, and I could not understand why I was bullied. I did not do anything bad. I was not excluded from social groups. I played sports. I communicated with other peers. But the only factor I could think of is when I was in the 4th grade, I stole a cell phone from my classmate. And since my town was very small, that news spread around the town. And when I even switched schools, when I transferred to 5th grade to a different school, for some reason in a couple of months everybody knew that, like in my class everybody knew that I did that. And since that day girls just started bullying me, and it did not stop for 5 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
I know, and I always felt bad that why did I do that? Why I decided to do that? Why are they still doing this to me? So that was very heartbreaking.
Absolutely, yes.
And my following question is, do you think there are certain groups, like particular groups of children who are more likely to be bullied? For example, those categories such as race, family income, age, gender.
Well, we do know that rates of participation in bullying are fairly equal between boys and girls, and a lot of that has to do with the kind of bullying behavior. So when we think about the different forms that bullying can take, um, the um, the evidence around race and ethnicity is actually fairly inconclusive. So again, it seems to be more about the social environment. So those who are in the majority racial group in a particular school setting seem to be more protected than those who might be in the minority in a particular group. And that may look different when you look at different demographic makeups of different school environments. So there's not really been a real consistent finding that there are particular races or ethnic groups that may be at a heightened risk for being targeted. It depends a lot on the social environment that they're in.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So how can parents of those students who are bullied protect them?
I think the greatest thing that they can do is make sure that they have ongoing conversations with their children about what's happening in their day-to-day lives. So this particularly seems to be important as we've seen rates of cyberbullying go up because of the nature of these technologies that kids are able to use to bully their peers. That oftentimes parents have little knowledge of what their children are doing online. And so it's important for parents in particular in this domain to really think about getting involved with their children's friend groups, knowing who their friends are, who they're hanging out with and associating with, even online, and asking questions about what they're up to. That seems to be a good line of defense. Going back to your experience and how oftentimes teachers were not necessarily part of the solution, that they didn't necessarily intervene effectively when you were being bullied, we do find that that can happen, that school staff don't always either see what's going on, don't recognize it as a problem, or just frankly don't intervene. So as parents, we can be proactive in working with the school and making sure that the school has a plan in place, that they have procedures in place, that there's some type of action that is a part of the school's plan when incidents of bullying are reported. And that's a really big way that I think parents can be advocates for their kids, is to make sure that they have those connections with the school.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think like children have to be more open to their parents, to talk to them and discuss certain issues, because I think when you're a teenager, you don't really want to share your life with your parents, and that also affects them. In my case, I did share with my mom my experience, and she did go to school and talk to teachers, to the dean of school, what happened to me, what can we do. But unfortunately, my school did not really react, which is again breaking part. But I hope that in the United States it's a completely different system. And
not always.
Not always.
Parents can certainly run into some resistance on the part of the school, and unfortunately we do find that a significant number of children who are victimized do not tell their parents that these things have happened. Oftentimes kids don't tell anyone. So it is a very difficult problem oftentimes to prevent, because we don't even sometimes know that it's happening. And this particularly seems to be a challenge when it comes, again, to cyberbullying, because a lot of times kids are afraid, if I tell my parent that this happened to me online, they may say I can't go to Instagram or Facebook anymore, or they may try to put restrictions on my cell phone use. And so there's this fear of a loss of privilege, and so that children may be less likely to tell their parents about these incidents because they're afraid they're going to lose even more in the long run. So again, it's about asking thorough questions on a consistent basis, and trying to piece together what might be happening in your child's kind of day-to-day experience with peers.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you would like to add to this whole problem?
No, I think the only other thing I would say is that there's a lot of really exciting work going on around the country and around the world. There's a number of different prevention programs that have been developed and tested that schools are starting to adopt. And so I think that there are lots of good resources out there, and so hopefully as we move forward, there's going to be even more of a chance to prevent these kinds of things from happening.
I also do hope so. I hope this problem will decrease over time.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Williford, for joining me today.
Thank you.
And next we're going to take a break, and I hope you're going to continue watching us, and we will be back. Welcome back and thank you for watching us. Today we talked about the reasons of school bullying in the US, its effect on children, and what we can do to prevent them from facing this problem. I hope this social problem will decrease over time in all schools around the United States with the help of our society and governors. This is Various Sides of Life, and I'm Maksini Kichigina. Next week we will be talking about sex trafficking in the United States and other countries as well.